All right. I hope you can all see the screen.
Yes,
All right.
I can.
You are welcome to today's meeting. So we are discussing, I'm going to be speaking on right to health and patient's rights. And with me, I have Samson A. Ogundele, making the presentation on behalf of Medical Law Hub. And it's going to last for about 40 minutes. So kindly use the mic and listen to what we have to present. So like I said earlier, the topic is right to health and patient's rights. And Damilare Adeoye will be the one to start. So it is very important to understand the basic um, words in the topic, because most times we realize that people don't even know uh, who a patient is and what some words are. So it is important to first talk about these things so that we can start from the um, ground level so that everybody can understand what we're talking about. So who is a patient? A patient is simply somebody who is receiving medical attention and care. Can also say a patient is someone who is sick or being treated for a disease. Uh, And so now it is important we talk about what patients' rights are all about. So patients' rights are the rights that an individual seeking healthcare is guaranteed or is granted. In general, a patient's rights include being completely informed of his or her condition, the medical treatment, steps that will be taken, and having written reports of the care received. But it's not limited to that. Patients' rights also include some other things like right to privacy and confidentiality, right to information, right to life and quality care, as well as freedom from discrimination, torture, cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment, which are all protected by patients' rights in healthcare delivery. So the patient has the right to considerate and respectful care that is provided in response to a service request in a way that ensures continuity. So basically, there are different angles in which we can look at patient's right, starting from receiving treatment, right to receive treatment, to level of safeguarding his life or her life. So um, from here, we are going to proceed to the next um, page. So in Nigeria, a patient, for example, has rights which are expected to be respected by physicians, but not just physicians or doctors alone, but also healthcare providers that attend to him. So some of the rights that were not highlighted earlier are the rights to information, the right to informed consent, the right to confidentiality, the right to considerate and respectful care, the right to refuse treatment. As we go ahead, we realize and we understand more what we know, what we're trying to say by all these rights, by bringing in some Nigerian cases and scenarios for our understanding. So what are the laws, that are available, that provides for patients' rights? What is the source of all these rights we're talking about? We have international laws, we have local laws, we have national laws that are in place to ensure that patients' rights are not infringed upon. So some of them are these. We have the African Charter on human and people's rights. We have Declaration of Geneva, the what popularly known as the Hippocratic Oath, which has metamorphosed to what we now have as physician's oath. And, we have the National Health Insurance Scheme, NHIS. We have the Code of Medical Ethics in Nigeria. And also we have rules of professional conduct for medical laboratory scientists, medical laboratory and technicians, and medical laboratory assistants uh, rules. We have the Medical and Dental Practitioners Act. We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we have the National Health Act 2014. So these are the major ones. We have, we have surrounding ones like subsidiary legislations that one way or the other provide for patients' right as well. But these are the fundamental ones, the basic ones. So we now go into detail to explain how they protect uh, patients' rights. Now, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, for example, provides for fundamental rights of Nigerians to health, according to Article 16 of the Charter. And what does this provide in essence? This provides that every individual shall have the right to enjoy the best attainable state of physical and mental health. That the state parties to the present charter, that is, which includes Nigeria, shall take the necessary measures to protect the health of their people and to ensure that they receive medical uh, attention when they're sick. So that's provided for in Article 16. And also in the same charter, Article 5 of the same charter, it states that uh, every individual shall have the right to, the respect of his dignity inherent in a human being and to the recognition of his legal status. So all forms of exploitation and degradation of human, particularly, or in particular slavery, slave trade, torture, cruel, inhumane or degrading punishment and treatment are now prohibited. And this has to do with, a period where we had slave trade and during the World War, and there was a need to have this charter to protect, humanity, basically. So going forward, we have Declaration of Geneva, also known as the Hippocratic Oath. This is the oath as a whole, and it basically provides for uh, how physicians, doctors, health experts um, should treat, humanity, patients, and indirectly this provides for patients' right as well. Because at the point of graduation, every physician, every doctor, every health expert are made um, to swear to such oath, to pledge to such oath. Maybe not Hippocratic oath itself, but something around this oath as well. So I had to bring this out so that we can have an idea of the content and how it relates to our discussion, the presentation today. So there's need to for confidentiality, for example, there's need to respect life, there's need to act with dignity, there's need to maintain honor in the profession, and there's need not to be tribalistic, uh, be partial in the treatment of the patient. So this is very fundamental as well. Going forward, we have the National Health Insurance Scheme in Nigeria. And in trying to safeguard the right of the patient, Section 5 of that scheme uh, provides for objectives of the scheme, and basically states that it shall ensure that every Nigerian has access to good health care services which is, basic right of the patient. It also states that it will protect families from the financial hardship of huge medical bills. As you know, we all know that receiving treatment and going to the hospitals can be quite expensive, but even in developed countries. So it limits the rise in the cost of healthcare services so that that will not undermine the right of patients or people to access healthcare. It also provides that equitable distribution of healthcare costs among different income groups must be maintained. So that is also another very fundamental provision of the law. Because there's need for proportionality, which is one of the principles of medical ethics. So maintaining high standard of healthcare delivery services within the scheme is also very important because we are talking about life and safeguarding life. So it is very important to maintain high standard of healthcare delivery. And finally, provides for efficiency in healthcare services. So that is very important. So that lives will not be lost, lives will be saved, at every point in time. So going forward, we have the Code of Medical Ethics in Nigeria, and we have other codes like as well, and other rules like that of medical laboratory scientists and technicians. We have that of nurses. So basically, these codes of conduct outline the duties of a physician to his patient, his colleagues, and medical laboratory scientists and their patient as well. So it's trying to ensure that physicians or doctors, as well as other health experts, respect the rights of patients in their practices. So we have Medical and Dental Professionals Act, and it is very fundamental to the right of patient, as it more like safeguards those rights by ensuring proper practice, by ensuring that there's proper practice, medical practice, and lives are not lost at the end of negligence or bad practices. So the Medical and Dental Practitioners Act creates a tribunal which is charged with the duty of considering and determining any case which engages the attention of the tribunal or is referred to the tribunal by another body called the Medical and Dental Practitioners Investigating Panel, which is basically to serve as a deterrent to bad practices and those who are practicing below the standard required of them. So we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has been helpful in preserving the idea of human dignity in international law, providing a legal and moral grounding for improved standard of care on the basis of our basic responsibilities towards each other as members of human family. So this is like the name poses universal, not just in Nigeria but all over the world, to ensure sanity and that rights are kept, that people are respected and there is no favoritism and everybody can receive care. So it makes it a right for everybody to receive uh, proper care, health care when required. So Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all people and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society, keeping this declaration constantly in mind, shall strive by teaching and educating uh, to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, and by progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance both among the people of member states themselves and among the people of territories under their jurisdiction. So we have the National Health Act 2014. The rights, it was, it came into being in 2014, like, you know, the National Assembly. So it provides for, important rights of the patients right here in Nigeria. So the first one is the right to emergency treatment. So Section 20 of that act states that a health care provider, health worker, or health establishment shall not refuse a person emergency, medical treatment for any reason whatsoever, um, and covers all the common excuses for delayed care, from type of diseases, mandatory upfront payments, to police reports for gunshots, wounds. All patients, regardless of their means of health challenges, shall have the right to be treated in an emergency, where it is an emergency, without discrimination. So, a violation of such rights, comes with sanctions and punishments according to that law. So we also have international covenants on economic and social and cultural rights. The United Nations further defines the right to health in Article 12, of that covenant on economic, social, and cultural rights, which states that the state parties to the present covenant recognizes the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. The steps to be taken by the state party to the present covenant to achieve the full realization of these rights shall include those necessary for specifically concentrated on the reduction of stillbirth rates and of infant mortality, and for the healthy development of the child, the improvement of all aspects of environmental and industrial hygiene, the prevention, treatment, and control of epidemic, endemic, occupation, and other diseases, and the creation of conditions which would assure to all medical service and medical attention in the event of sickness. So now I would like to hand it over to Mr. Ogundele. I hope he can hear me so that I can talk more on the cases on patients' rights in Nigeria, and
Yes.
especially
Can you hear me?
uh,
Can you hear me?
yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yes. Very well. Thank you very much. Well, briefly, we are going to be talking about, actually, we have talked about the various laws, statutes, and decrees that guarantee patient rights in Nigeria. However, we just want to look at Nigerian cases that supports patient rights in Nigeria and the various limitations to patient rights in Nigeria. As rightly mentioned, we have several rights that are guaranteed under the law. Number one, we have right to information. We have right to informed consent. We have the right to confidentiality. We have the right to considerate and respectful care. And we have rights to refuse treatment. These are the rights accruing to a patient in Nigeria. But the question is, are there limitations to this right? As we all know, a right without a check or limitation would resort to an abuse. So the question is, what are the limitations to this right? However, before I touch the limitation to the various rights that I've said, I just want to consider one or two cases that are supported patient rights in Nigeria. I'm looking at the case of Medical and Dental Practitioner Disciplinary Tribunal versus Okonko. In the case, the respondent, a medical practitioner, was consulted by a couple who were Jehovah's Witnesses. The wife was very ill, and the respondent medical assistance was sought. However, the couple gave the respondent written instructions that he was not to perform any blood transfusion on the patient. He proceeded to treat the patient without transfusing the blood. However, they lost the patient in the course of the treatment. What am I trying to say? The doctor here, having been instructed by the patient that do not give us blood transfusion because of our belief, the doctor respected the belief of the patient. And immediately this thing happened, the mother of the lady that died and the brother reported the matter to the tribunal. The tribunal gave the doctor 6 months suspension. Consequent to that, the doctor appealed to the Court of Appeal. The court held that a patient who is an adult has the right to either accept treatment or refuse treatment. What am I trying to say? The courts classified and supported a patient's right to either accept treatment or refuse treatment. So that is just what the case is actually saying. Also, the case, our popular case of Ezebono versus Dr. Falaye, a very recent case, 2020 Supreme Court case, where the court also held likewise. But briefly, before we conclude this section, I briefly want to touch on the aspect of what are the limitations to this right. As I've rightly said earlier, that there cannot be rights without limitation. The moment there is a right without limitation, there will be abuse of the right. And that is why I still refer back to the case of Medical and Dental Practitioner Disciplinary Tribunal versus Okonko. The court said that there are limitations to this right. And the court held that the limit of the freedom, as in the cases, are where this right impinges on other people's right, or where it puts the welfare of the society, public health in jeopardy. The court was saying that where the patient will claim a right that is going to affect the whole community or the health of the whole community, as such instance, such right can be curtailed. Like we all know in the case of Ezebono versus Dr. Falaye, in that case, a baby who is just a month old was severely sick. But as a parent who are Jehovah's Witness, the only way the baby can survive is when a blood transfusion is given to the baby. But the parent refused. The doctor therefore went to the police station, and which allowed the doctor, in order to save the life of the baby, to actually transfuse the blood. The parent contended from the magistrate court to the Supreme Court. And the court held that there are some situations whereby this patient's right, even though the parent who are the locus parental has the right to make an informed consent on behalf of their child, there are situations whereby this consent, this informed consent will be limited. And that is the case of Ezebono. The court held that the baby who at that moment cannot make a decision on his own, the court can actually intervene and make such decision on his behalf. As such, the baby was administered, there was blood transfusion administered on the baby, and the baby is alive. The baby actually survived it. So in essence, no matter the rights we have actually accrued to the patient, there are limitations to this right. Likewise, the confidentiality, we all know when the court order makes demand for a record, no matter how confidential the record might be, since it's a court order, the hospital would also honor such a request. So that is all about today's session. I do want to appreciate the host. Thank you very much, sir. I'm done with my own part. Hello, sir.
Okay, I'm with you. So
Hello.
thank you very much for very short and precise presentation. So we'll just go to the last part. Okay, so thank you very much. We have to make it really short so that we can have opinions and questions from the participants. So if you would like to say something on the subject matter or you have a question, I actually like to have the opinion of Dr. Adeleke as a doctor, because we are basically attacking, it seems like we are basically speaking against the health practitioners, medical practitioners, health establishments, in this discussion, this presentation. So I would like to know your opinion and whether you have a question
Okay,
on the subject matter.
thank you very much. Thank you very much, the host and the co-presenter, for enlightening us and reminding us of the extant decrees and laws that guarantees patients' rights and rights to health. So I want to also reiterate that these laws are established in the training and practice of medicine in Nigeria, and the ethics and code of practice too. They are well spelled out. So the right to privacy, the right to refuse treatment, right to emergency care, right to, as stated by the presenters. But there are quite a number of challenges we still have in our climate in Nigeria, which I want to point out some of them today. As far as the ethics are concerned, every doctor is aware and we will practice and live by the Hippocratic oath, which we all swear to, and we do our best to live, to keep our words on that. But the context of the Nigerian healthcare system, we have a poor arrangement when it comes to emergency medical care. Most hospitals, for example, now the public healthcare system is not so well funded or well manned in terms of personnel and medical resources. So we have a lot of private sector healthcare services taking up that space. And the challenge we still have is that the setup is usually not the standard setup, especially when it comes to emergency medical services. Most healthcare facilities, be it private or public, do not have a standard ambulance or a working ambulance for emergency transfer of patients, or even bad road networks. So, many of them don't have an emergency department or emergency unit with the right manpower on standby to attend to patients. So most people just run into the hospital expecting to be attended to by whomever they see. Whereas these substandard arrangements makes it quite difficult for the medical practitioner to make a proper assessment, and then now taking it in the context of a private setup where they still have to earn the income, the revenue for the facility, they still have a challenge in providing the prompt medical services without some deposits of sorts, especially if the patient is so much of a stranger or someone that seems like someone that will goof away without paying the medical bills. So we still need to have a good look at our emergency response in the country, the setup. And so this now takes me to my next point. The National Health Insurance Scheme, which is supposed to guarantee health, as the presenters have stated. The National Health Insurance Scheme has been in place since 2004. And sadly, it is still, the coverage is still just about 5% of the entire population of the country. So, because the people that are covered are mostly civil servants and people with steady paying jobs. The scheme has been expanding into, especially involving HMOs, health management organizations, to see how they can increase the coverage. But at most, the coverage of the population is still so much more less than 10% of the population, or a population of over 200 million people. So this still increases the out-of-pocket spending necessary for people to receive medical attention, be it on emergency basis or a working basis. So this still puts a lot of constraint to the standard of care that people can receive in the country. And this constraint too has made the medical practice to be a bit defensive too. And because the medical practitioners, the institutions are usually on the receiving end of the negative outcomes of these scenarios, especially when the facility is probably maybe overwhelmed based on their little resources, their little manpower, and then the patients' lives are at stake. they still have to deliver and save lives. But if you don't have the right resources, how will you be able to do that? Several scenarios, even the medical personnel, the team, they do everything, go beyond the call of duty to see how they can save life. And even there may still be negative outcomes that are not preventable. But what you get is outbursts and reactions sometimes that are uncalled for, even from people who have not paid you a dime for what you have done, despite all your efforts. So we still need to have a sit down and take a look at the way the healthcare sector is organized as it is, because it is not serving the interests of the medical practitioner, the medical team, and neither is it serving the best interest of the Nigerian population. So on that note, so the Hippocratic Oath was also updated to include to make the doctor swear and oath that he or she will look after his or her own health first, to ensure that he is alive and in good state of physical and mental health to do the needful, to take care of the sick patients too. So because at some point the doctors were dying and collapsing and while on duty because of the stress of the work, which was
Dr.
paying.
Adeleke, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
I understand. I understand. I was expecting to speak for the doctors and the health practitioners. So I wasn't surprised when you mentioned the fact that physicians and doctors must secure their own. I mean, secure themselves. Protect themselves as well.
Yes.
Likely, have um, another presentation on health experts right as well soon. So
Okay.
that I believe you love that than talking about patients' rights.
Okay.
So thank you
All
very
right. So
much.
I believe I'll be able to point out some of the shortcomings of this established
Laws and
status quo in the country. All right. Thank you.
thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your presence. I don't know whether there is any questions from the participants or any other contribution. If you want to speak, please.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Uh, well,
Dr. Philip would like to make a contribution.
oh, okay. Please let him go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. It's been quite educating as usual. Well, I want to agree with the doctor that spoke earlier, Dr. Adeleke. Talking about patient rights in Nigeria, when you look at let me say, the norm or what obtains in the texts and what is the reality on ground in Nigeria, the health system in Nigeria doesn't really give you a luxury of rights, as it were. And that's one thing I subtly try to let my patients realize. Normally, in a day, there is a number of patients you are supposed to see as a physician. And then I run a clinic and I'm seeing a specialist clinic, not GOPD, and I'm seeing 25 patients. And it's just around 3 p.m. I've started the clinic since 8, and there are still like 15 patients outside. Now, at that stage, when you are entering into the consulting room, we are both on edge. Let me just put it that way. And there are a lot of abnormalities. There are just a lot of abnormalities. So the realities on ground in Nigeria are quite harsh and almost makes it look like we are at the mercies of the few health workers that we have around. And although this is now not an excuse for malpractice, but I just want us to understand that the realities on ground are far different from the ones we read in the texts, so that we will not continue to live in denial and fantasies. Now, I know that one of the basic principles I know about patients' rights is that patient has a right to reject treatment, but has no right to demand treatment. And while there's one issue the other doctor raised, and the issue is that of the National Health Insurance Scheme. I want to know, is there a way, although, well, the way this country is, everything is pretty messed up. I think there should be pressure from the populace mounting on the government to do something about national health insurance scheme, to do something about universal health coverage, to do something about equipping our government hospitals. You know, these are the things that would ensure that when you come to the hospital, you even have a right at all, or you are going to be right when you insist on your right. Because a lot of things happen. Let's not go into emergency care that the other doctor was talking about. When you have an emergency, God help you. There are a lot of things we cannot do. There are a lot of things we improvise. And over time, with the advent of litigations, doctors are being defensive now. So I see a patient who is bleeding from somewhere. I think of what I can do to save this patient. And as I'm thinking of how to help this patient, I'm also thinking, can I defend what I'm doing? I think I should just push this patient to the teaching hospital. I think I should just transfer this patient to where, if anything happens to this patient. And over time, something is happening in medical practice that is making it look like just opposing the realities on ground and the theories. Doctors are practicing defensively. So I think we should also put that into consideration and also mount pressure on the government to improve universal health coverage.
Yeah, are you
I think
there?
that will go.
Yes, can you
Hello.
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I totally support your position. I guess we have more discussions and presentations to make on that so that we can elaborate more on those issues. I do understand that there is a limit to what doctors can do right here in Nigeria because I understand I know for as a fact that doctors suffer brain drain because when we look at the rate at which um, patients troop in and then the doctors available at every point in time, it's quite overwhelming and you know um, that could be a defense for a lot of things we are seeing, and then the infrastructure, the medical tools, equipment that should be in place are not in place. I totally understand. However, this presentation is focused mainly on patients' right, so would make available or make more available platforms to discuss those issues. So thank you very
Okay,
much.
excuse me. If I may, I want to answer his question on NHIS expansion.
Okay, but you have 20 minutes to do that, 20 seconds to do that.
Okay, so I just want to say that just like Nigeria has a lot of good laws on paper, but poorly practiced, the NHIS is well standardized on paper. And even now, most states are beginning to drop their own state-owned health insurance schemes. But the challenge is still the follow-up, because a lot of people still have challenge getting the proper treatment because their HMOs will have a different a way of boycotting the standard way. Maybe they may be holding the health facility. The health facility may be going bankrupt, and the patient will be coming for care. And when the hospital is not getting the funds, how will they be able to keep up? So this underground challenges is one of the things that is undermining the health insurance scheme too, which we need to talk about.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We have to end the presentation now because we plan to use 45 minutes and we have less than a minute to go. So thank you very much for your time. The recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel soon. So if you'd like to go through it again, just check. So thank you very much. Do have a wonderful week ahead.